Okay, today's topic is algebraic fractions. Basically, there are fractions, okay, like 1/2 or 2/5, but now it will involve variables. So other than numbers that you will see in your fractions, you will also see letters, okay, and these are variables. Okay, so before we have a look at algebraic fractions, so today we will cover addition and subtraction of algebraic fraction, but before that, let's do a quick recap on expansion and factorization. And you will be doing a lot of expansion and factorization in this topic. Okay, let's do a quick recap. So the first one here we have is 2x squared minus 2 in bracket 4x plus 5. So the order of operation is multiplication and division, okay, and then it's addition or subtraction, whichever comes first in the expression. So notice that when you see 2 in bracket 4x plus 5, that is multiplication. So the first thing we need to do before we do the subtraction, we need to expand. So 2x squared minus, so you have two terms in your bracket, so you need to expand to both, multiply -2 to both the terms, so you get minus 8x minus 10. Okay, so we have expanded it, and notice that we have coefficient of 2, -8, and -10. They are all multiples of 2. So we can take the 2 out, leaving behind x squared minus 4x minus 5. And let's have a look at this expression in the bracket. It does look familiar, doesn't it? It is what we call the quadratic equation. So let's see if we can factorize it. We put x and x. So we have -5 here. So the number 5 here, what are the factors of 5? That will be 5 and 1. And then we have a -4x here. So we need to think of what signs we will put in the factors to give us a -4x. And that would be -5 here and a +1 here. So that is how you do the expansion, and we did a bit of factorization here. Let's have a look at the next one here. We have 4w in bracket is a factor w minus 2. Same thing. First things first, what we do is we expand it, because notice that here is multiplication. Alright, 4w, in bracket w minus 2, that is a multiplication. So we get 4w squared minus 8w minus 5. Okay, then next let's try to factorize that. We'll take 2w, okay, and then 5. So 4w, I've broken it down into 2w left and right, and now we have the number 5 here. The factors of 5 are 1 and 5, and you need -8w, so that will give me a -5 there to give me -10, and then plus 2w. Okay, you can expand it as part of checking to make sure that you get to this quadratic equation, 4w squared minus 8w minus 5. Right. Okay. So we will be applying expansion and factorization when we do algebraic fractions. So the first one that we will look at is addition and subtraction of algebraic fraction with the same denominators. So when we have same denominators, fractions with same denominators, if you look to the right here, okay, you should be able to recall this is lower secondary fractions. Okay, so 3 over 7 plus 2 over 7, because the denominators are the same, what you do is you can add the numerators, the number at the top. So the point is, before we do addition and subtraction, the denominators, okay, denominators are numbers that are below the fraction, okay, the bottom part here. These are denominators. So before we can add or subtract, the denominators must be the same. That's the first step. Denominators must be the same. Okay? And if it is the same, then you can add or subtract the numerators. Again, numerators are the numbers or the expression at the top. Okay, at the top of the fraction. So now, in here, so we have let's have a look at part A here. Simplify each of the following. The denominator is 5 and the second term denominator is 5. So they both have the same denominators. So now all we do is we just add the numerators. Okay, so because it's the same denominator, we'll have denominator of 5. So 4a plus 3a, that is 7a. So 7a over 5. Alright? So keep that in mind. We always, before we start doing any addition or subtraction, we want it to be the same denominators. So next, denominator is 2x and 2x. So our common denominator here will be 2x, and we can add the numerators. Y plus 3y is, oh, this should be, okay, so our common denominator is 2x. Now we can, so here we have subtraction. Okay, so the subtraction here, y minus 3y will give me negative 2y. Okay, and because I have 2 in my numerator and 2 in my denominator, I want to make it to its simplest form. So what I do is divide by 2 in the numerator. I also divide it to its denominator. So 2 divided by 2 will give me 1. So that will be negative y over x. Okay, I'll make a note here. You can write negative yx like this, or y over x like this. Okay, the same line with the fraction. Okay, the negative sign is usually not attached to the denominator. All right, we do not write it below here. It's either up there or same line with the fraction here. Now, okay, so we have one example on subtraction. So the next bit here, same thing. Our denominator is 5w, and the second term is also 5w. So we have a common denominator of 5w. Okay, now what we can do now is x plus 2 minus this factor x minus 5, and we're going to make use of brackets. is very important because now it is not a single term, but you're subtracting it to two terms here. So x plus 2 minus, make use of bracket, x minus 5. Okay, so equals to x plus 2. Now here, the negative, I will multiply, well, technically I have a coefficient of 1 here. So I will multiply negative 1 with x, that will give me negative x. Negative 1 multiply by negative 5 will give me positive 5. Common denominator is 5w. Okay, so x and x, that cancels out. So x minus x cancels out, leaving behind 2 plus 5, 7 over 5w. Okay, so these are the answers, our simplified answers. Now, these are examples of same denominators. Okay, now let's have a look at other types of denominators. Okay, so you will be also given different denominators, and when different denominators, one we have when they are a multiple of each other, when they're not no common factor, and when they are common factors. So let's have a look at the first type, when the denominators are a multiple of each other. Okay, let's have a look at the first example. Simplify the following expression: 3 over 4y minus 1 over 2y. Okay, same thing. I have given you a guideline here how you will tackle this when you have numbers. So in here, okay, if you look at to the right, there's a flashback note here. If you have half minus 4, what you want to do is to make it to the same denominator first. Okay, so to make it to the same denominator, I can have a common denominator. Okay, a common denominator of 4, because you know that 4 is a multiple of 2. Okay, and it's 2 times 2 to give you 4. So we can have a common denominator of 4. So to have a common denominator of 4, I will need to multiply the denominator here by 2, and we multiply by 2 at the top as well. So that will be 2. So now that the denominators are the same, then you can subtract the numerator 2 minus 1. Okay, so what you get is 1/4. So we're going to apply the same thing. So we have denominators of 4y and 2y. And notice that 4y is twice of 2y. So they are a multiple of each other. So we can make it to the same denominator, common denominators. Okay, common denominators will be 4y. Okay, we take the bigger one here, 4y. So if we make it to common denominator 4y, well, technically I'm multiplying by 1. So I'm multiplying by 1 to the numerator as well. For 1 over 2y, to make this denominator, common denominator 4y, I will need to multiply it by 2. If I multiply by 2 in the denominator, I multiply by 2 in the numerator as well. Okay, and then what will that give me? 1 times 3, so that's 3, minus 1 times 2, 2. So that would be 1 over 4y. Okay? Right, the next one, same thing. We have rs in the denominator and s. It is a multiple of each other because it's r times. Okay, so rs is basically r times of s. So our common denominator, we can have it as rs. So now we want both denominators to be rs. Well, this is already rs, but so I will just multiply it by 1. Okay, and s here I will need to multiply it by r to make it rs. If I multiply by r in the denominator, the numerator also multiply by r, and that will give me 1 times 4 is 4 minus 2r times r, that is 2r squared. Okay, simplify it. Notice that 4 and 2 here is a common factor, so I can take that out. 2 leaving behind 2 minus r squared over rs. So that will be our simplified answer. Okay, so when they are a multiple of each other, what you do is make it to the common denominator. Okay, we see here that 4y is twice of 2y, so we can have a common denominator of 4y. Now let's have a look at denominators that are not common factor. Okay, they're not common factor. So as you can see, our denominators here, denominators are not the same. So but we want, before we can add or subtract, we want the denominators to be the same. So how can we do that? Well, we can use, remember, lowest common multiple, LCM, lowest common multiple. Okay, now how do we do that? Well, you have a denominator of 3 and 4. So denominators 3 and 4, what is the lowest common multiple? So first let's list out what are the multiples of 3. So we have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 and so on. What are the multiples of 4? So you say 4, 8, 12. So now you can see that we have a common multiple, 12 and 12. Okay, and that's the lowest common multiple. Okay, if we carry on further, we will find also other common multiples here, but 12 is our lowest common multiple. So now we can have a common denominator of 12. To do, if we have a common denominator of 12, so the denominator 3 here, you will need to multiply by 4 to get 12. So you also multiply by 4 in the numerator. Same thing for this fraction. You multiply by 3 to get 12. And you multiply by 3 to the numerator. So now, what do I get? 4 times 5x is 20x minus 3 times 3x, that would be 9x. So what you have here is 20x minus 9x is 11x over 12. Okay, now that's one way of doing it, using lowest common multiple, or you can use easiest common denominator, where you could just take the product of the denominator, 3 times 4. Okay, and then you can have it as 12. That's another way of doing it as well. Okay, so what you do is you look at the denominator 3 and denominator 4, take the product, which is 12, so you have a common denominator of 12. All right. Okay. The next one, we have denominator of 3 and 2. Common denominator will be, well, if we do the LCM quickly, we have 3, 6, 9, 12. For 2's, multiples of 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. What is my lowest common multiple? My lowest common multiple is 6. Okay, I know I have 12 there. Alright, so if we carry on, there will be more common multiples, but I just want the lowest common multiple, which is 6. So we can have a common denominator of 6. Or same thing, like I said, the second way of doing it is that you take the product of the denominator 3 and 2. That would be 6. Okay, next is to make 3 here to become 6, you will need to multiply it by 2. Multiplying it by 2 to the denominator, so you also need to multiply by 2 to the numerator. Same thing, we will multiply by 3 and then we will multiply by 3 to the numerator. So now make sure to use the brackets. So 2 multiply 4x minus 1 plus 3 multiply 3x plus 5. Okay, if we open up the bracket, that will say 8x minus 2. So plus 3 times 3x plus 9x plus 3 times 5 plus 15 over 6. So 8x plus 9x, 17x, negative 2 plus 15, that would be plus 13 over 6. That's our simplified answer. Okay, so let's have a look at the last one, denominators that are of common factors. Denominators of common factors. Let's have a look at the denominator. You have 4p and 6p. Okay, same thing. Before we do addition and subtraction, we want it to the to have a common denominator. So how do I make this 2 here, 4p and 6p, to be the to have a common denominator? So same thing, you can use your lowest common multiple. We have 4, so 4, 8, 12, 16, and 6. So multiples of 16, 6, 12. There you go. You can see that, oops. You can see that your lowest common multiple is 12. And notice that I have the variable p here. So what we get is 12. We can have a common denominator of 12p. Okay? For 4p here, to have a denominator 12p, I multiply it by 3. So I multiply by 3 in the numerator as well. Next, denominator 6p. How does that become 12p? I multiply it by 2. So you multiply by 2 top and bottom. And what I get is 3 times 1, 3, plus 1 times 2, 2. So you get 5 over 12p. Okay? The next one, instead of a number, okay, you have factors. But notice that this is x plus 1, and this is a denominator of x plus 1 squared. Okay? So what can be our common denominator here? We can have x plus 1 squared. Okay, so when you have factors, power 2, power 3, okay, you will take the highest power. Alright, so same thing, our common denominator here will be x plus 1 squared. So in our first term here, denominator is already x plus 1 squared. So you're just multiplying it by 1. If you want to miss this step, that's also fine. But I just want to show you that you are technically multiplying it by 1. Okay, here we have x plus 1. How do I make it to become a common denominator of x plus 1 squared? It means that I multiply by another x plus 1. How should I do that? So I multiply it by, okay, can you see that? X plus 1. Okay, I multiply it by x plus 1. So I also multiply it by x plus 1 in the numerator. And that should give me, okay, 1 times 3, 3 minus 2 x plus 1. Okay, open up the bracket. Don't forget that's negative 2 times x. So that's negative 2x. Negative 2 times 1, negative 2 over x plus 1 squared. So simplify it. 3 minus 2 is 1. And then 1 minus 2x over x plus 1 squared. Okay, so those are the different types of algebraic expression that you can get. Same denominators, multiple denominator of each other, no common factors or common factors in the denominator. But the point is that you can subtract and add only when the denominators are the same. So before you add and subtract, you need a common denominator. Okay, and we have a look at how to make it to become a common denominator by using the lowest common multiple, or you can use the easiest common denominator by taking the product of the two numbers. Okay, that is in the case of numbers. If it is not numbers, for example factors like this, what you do is you take the common denominator will be the one with the highest power. Okay, there's a follow-up exercise to this, so you can do a practice on your algebraic fraction by doing the exercise. Okay, thank you guys.